Welcome everyone to One Solution for In-House 3D Printing, an introduction to digital workflows presented to you by RapidShape and Dr. Nitish Surathu. My name is Julia Balev and I will be your host for this webinar. Today I'd like to take you through a brief introduction to RapidShape and the One Solution, and then I will hand it over to Dr. Surathu for a detailed description on how to get started with 3D printing in dental offices and small laboratories. And then we will have a short Q&A session, so feel free to put your questions in the chat at any point, and we will make sure that we can address them at the Q&A in the end. All right, let me get started with RapidShape. RapidShape is a family-owned company based in the south of Germany and surrounded by many high-tech manufacturing companies. The first company founded here by Georg Schultheiss was Georg Schultheiss Electronic and is today still active as Schultheiss GmbH. The company focused on casting machines, primarily in the jewelry and industrial production. As you can see here, we brought a picture along Georg Schultheiss manufacturing his first machines at the production facility in this area. His son, Andreas Schultheiss, is today's CEO of RapidShape and of Schultheiss, and he was first tasked in 2010 by developing his own 3D printer for jewelry production. As you may know, 3D printers for jewelry have to be incredibly precise because you have incredibly fine structures that you want to print. So by comparison, jewelry printers have to print at 25 micron layer thickness, whereas the standard in dental is either between 50 to 100, so at least twice as fine as any dental application that we're printing today. So from the beginning on, RapidShape was founded with a deep understanding of precision printing. This is our CEO, Andreas Schultheiss, here in the picture, and you can see in the back, this was actually the first 3D printer developed here at RapidShape. In 2015 marks the first participation of RapidShape at IDS, the International Dental Show in Cologne. They first exhibited the desktop and standalone printers developed until then. Then, soon after, RapidShape developed its first automated 3D printing solution that can produce up to 4,000 models per day and is still something RapidShape is very well established for producing these high-speed 3D printing solutions that are fully automated for especially aligner model production. But today you could even automate denture-based production, etc. with it. Today, we are worldwide at your side across 5 different countries. Our home office here, HQ, is in Germany. Then we have our support and production facility in Hungary. Then we have support in China, Japan, and the United States, with over 200 employees worldwide. This is today's 3D printing portfolio by RapidShape. This is by now the 3rd generation of 3D printers developed by RapidShape, and they include everything from desktop printers to industrial standalone units. All are based on trusted DLP technology, and all of them are planned and developed here in Heimsheim, Germany, focusing on our key principles. What are our key principles at RapidShape? We focus on user-centric design. So anything you touch, we think about the process of a dental lab technician or of a dental office. How would they approach this? How can you ensure a clean workflow? And the One is actually a great example that we'll show later on as well. Product longevity. Every product in our products is designed to last and ensure consistent performance. They're all solid build. There are no plastic parts. Plastic parts tend to deteriorate quickly with resin and IPA exposure. And the DLP technology requires recalibration, but not replacement of the light source. And that can ensure long-term consistent performance across our printing solutions. And we really highlight a complete validated solution maintaining material flexibility. So what does that mean? It means that we ensure that from the software to the final print out of the cure, the parameters are preset, and these are developed by our engineers here in Heimsheim and our partners at the resin manufacturers who need to obey by international standards and regulatory bodies such as the MDR, FDA, Health Canada, etc. And why is this important? Well, we want to have peace of mind and the peace of mind that your patient is safe. At the same time, we also want to provide you the flexibility of using the best materials on the market. So this is the solution that is produced by that. How does all of this come together? Well, we developed a product, the one solution, which is built for the future. The one combines our ideas of what is user-centric design, how can we ensure this product lives long-term, and how can we bring peace of mind and ease of use to our customers. So let me get into that. We developed a 3D printing solution that allows you to focus on what is trusted technology, so you do not have to worry about the consistency that you're getting with this output. We are trusting on DLP technology because we know that it can deliver these consistent results. There is no compromising on the accuracy of the fit or the finish of a 3D print while still delivering high-speed prints. As it is part of our name, Rapid Shape prides itself in producing some of the fastest 3D printing solutions available. And as Nitish will show you, precision of each implant crown, surgical guide, splint is superb with every print. LCD printers, for example, on the other hand, suffer from short lifespans of the LCD panels, while DLP projectors are designed for regular calibration and can thus live a very long life. We are seeing many Rapid Shape printers that were sold 5 to 7 years ago that are still in use today. Same-day treatments and same appointment deliveries for across 15 workflows with a variable build platform size. This is something Nitish will go into more detail about, but you have all the flexibility across multiple different resins and multiple different workflows to ensure that you're getting the best return on the equipment. But sometimes it has to go fast, and provisionals need to be delivered fast, and splints can be returned within a single appointment. The Rapid Print Kit allows you that kind of flexibility and even speeds up the printing process with the one much more for these single use cases. 15 plus workflows with the one. Now I just want to go through this real quick. You have options, and Nitish will elaborate much more what is possible with the one. So I will just touch on this. You fit around 2 master models, crown and bridge models on one build platform. We print at a standard 50 micron layer thickness for this type of application, and you print this within 50 minutes. This is really one of the benefits of DLP technology supported by the Rapid Shape patented force feedback technology, making sure you have really wonderful, precise, smooth surface applications, but you're actually achieving them in a really fast print time. Full arch implants or other restorations, we're looking anywhere between 30 to 40 minutes in terms of print time at a 50 micron layer thickness. And then when you're printing 3 to 4 splints at a 45-degree angle, you would be around 35 minutes. Now, what is so exciting about the new one and the new Rapid Print Kit? Here are just the highlights. It's versatile, it's efficient, and fast. The Rapid Print Kit delivers incredible printing speed at 8 minutes per crown or bridge, and it is designed for efficient resin use and reduced waste. Crown and bridge materials can be quite pricey, so you really want to be efficient about how you're using them, and also you may have different shades available that you want to be using on a regular basis. This is why every Rapid Print Kit is delivered with 4 reservoirs. 3 of them you can use for crown and bridge materials, for example, and then 1 of them is a crystal polish reservoir. All of them are delivered with a lid. They fit around 50 to 100 milliliters, so they're quite efficient in usage. What you see here at the bottom is the adapter that you place the little Rapid Print Kit in, and then on the right-hand side here you have the build platform within the removal tool. Now, what is RS Crystal Polish actually? RF Crystal Polish splints essentially just means it delivers you really high shine splints right out of the printer. All it is a additional layer on the reservoir and adjusted parameter settings for the print. And it allows you to have essentially no layer lines, no fingerprints on your finished product. It saves you an incredible amount of time with polishing. It makes sure you have beautiful results to deliver to your patient without much of your own manual labor going into it. And we also produce this at a record printing time. These RS Crystal Polish splints take about 60 minutes to produce. Now, we're talking about material versatility, so I just wanted to give you a brief overview of which resins are going to be available for the one at this point. We have our friends here from the United States, Argan, Benko are listed on here, Pacdent as well, and then some of the other ones that are very popular around here are Bago, Detax, Corprint, Dentona, DMG, Keystone, of course, and Vita. So you have quite the selection at your hands. These are our closest partners, and we know that their materials achieve a great print result on the one, and that's why we are very happy to recommend them. Now, briefly, how do we ensure a validated workflow? Complete process control is quite important to ensure peace of mind, patient safety. And the two ways we've done this with all rapid shape systems is, first of all, the intelligent connectivity between software, printer, wash, and cure. All this really means is that once the print job on the printer is complete, it communicates it to the wash. You will find in the wash a little button that says print jobs. In there, you will always see the newest print job completed on the printer listed. This makes it quite easy if you would like to delegate the workflow to your dental assistant, that you can just click on that print job that was last imported, and that's going to be the correct resin for you to wash. This is quite important that you always have the right wash parameters. As I said, we work quite meticulously to ensure that we have the parameter settings correct for all the resins that we are validating. Same principle then from wash to cure. Once the wash job is complete, the curing unit will list the last print job in there, and then the right curing parameters are already listed in there. Now, all parameters for all validated resins are preset from our slicing software Print Studio to the printer parameters, as well as the wash and the cure. So if you were going to select any of these resins, let's say Detax Splint Master, it will list its name, Detax Splint Master, in there. All you need to do is click the start button. There's no adjustment on your part in terms of how long should it be washed or how long should it be cured. You don't have to select intensity or anything like that. The system just knows for you. This is really one of the ways we want to ensure delegation within a team is possible. Yeah. Now, what is the RFID system? If you go in here, you will find here. So I will hold on the bottle next to the printer, and it automatically sees it as RSVVC&B Ultimate A2. Then I scan the reservoir. Each reservoir has a little RFID tag on it, and the printer automatically then writes that resin onto that reservoir. Now, whenever I place that reservoir into the printer already knows, okay, this is the resin. Are you sure that you want to use this resin for this application? For example, if you're sending a print job to the printer, and let's say you use a different shade or you use a completely different resin, the printer will give you a warning that you've input the incorrect resin here. Again, this is one of the many ways that we want to make delegation within a team possible, to make it more likely that anyone in the team is going to be able to adopt the 3D printing workflow, make it their own, and yeah, move on forward with that. All right. The goal of the one is truly to create one platform for seamless collaboration so that the entire team can work together on one system and achieve great results, no matter who is using the printer. Of course, we also have a slicing software that is integrated in this entire workflow. Our Rapid Shape Print Studio is really designed to make that process of slicing quite easy. So we integrate directly with FreeShape Produce and also with DMG Dentamile, and there's a lot more integrations coming soon. I will only briefly touch on the wash because Nitish will go into much more detail with it, but the Rapid Shape wash includes a two-step automated wash and dry cycle, and it includes activated carbon filters to minimize vapors. So if you're using isopropyl alcohol, as is mostly recommended with most of the resins, you will not have this uncomfortable alcohol smell when you utilize our wash system. Our curing unit is a vacuum curing unit, but it also has the option to integrate with nitrogen if you wanted to do that. And why is this important? We don't want to work in a regular atmosphere environment because actually without oxygen, we're actually able to achieve improved mechanical properties. So this is the one chairside solution powered by German engineering. Just a brief summary of everything that is possible with the one. But I am quite excited that our lecturer, Dr. Nitish Surathu, is going to go into much more detail about the solution today. Dr. Surathu is a periodontist, a director with the ACE Institute. He's a periodontist by trade, but I would say his true passion lies in teaching. He teaches on periodontics, implants, and digital dentistry across the whole world. So if you would like to join him for any of his future lectures, feel free to check out the ACE Institute website. This is where you will find his next lecture around the world. All right, thank you so much for being here, Nitish. I'm quite excited to listen to your lecture. And to everyone in the audience, please feel free to put in your questions so that we can address them during our Q&A later.
Julia gave you quite an introduction to the one, and I feel like I hope I'm able to add some useful information to everything that she has said. The one's been a very unique printer for us. It looks unique. It does things differently. And I really want to share my own experience with this printer. So what has been my experience? I bought my first 3D printer over 7 years ago, when most dentists hadn't even heard of 3D printing. And so I've played around with 3D printing for a long time now and printed just about everything there is to print. I'm excited by new applications, by new resins, and I can't wait to try something the minute it's launched. So in that sense, I'm probably an early adopter. And I have worked with a lot of printers over the last 7 years. I've been a beta tester for the one since it was in the pipeline with Rapid Shape. And it's been exciting to be involved with industry, to be able to offer feedback, to actually see that feedback acknowledged and taken, and to see change implemented. It's very exciting to be part of something like that with any company because it gives you the opportunity to define things from a user perspective. But I'm also a clinician and a lab owner, very, very unusual. And so I do have the clinician's perspective on any printer, but I also have the perspective of a lab owner on any printer. And so we've got different kinds of printers. We've got printers that are really lab solutions, but we've also got desktop solutions, and the one is one of the desktop solutions that we have in our practice. And so the perspective that I will be bringing to my presentation today it will be that of a clinician working with a desktop solution, and I'll really be telling you about what my experience has been printing with the one in that kind of space. What really matters to me in a 3D printer? What do I look for when I work with different kinds of 3D printers? These 6 icons pretty much sum up everything that I look for. I look for applications, no doubt. I want to print a whole bunch of things that I use every day in my practice. I won't be able to talk about all the applications that are possible with this printer today, but I will certainly talk at least about a couple of very important workflows that are really relevant in the clinical world today. I do look at accuracy, and I'll talk about that as well. I do look at speed within reason. As a clinician, I do appreciate the opportunity to provide my patients sometimes with same appointment solutions. It's pretty cool that we're able to do that with 3D printing today. And when I first started out in 3D printing, things took forever. And there was no such thing as even a same-day solution, let alone a same appointment solution. But today we've got incredible speed in terms of possibilities with some workflows, and I will share what I do with same appointment solutions. I look for companies that are growing their 3D printer as well. And I'm not just talking about that in terms of hardware, but I'm also talking about that in terms of resins that are actually used with the printer. You have to realize that the hardware is just a point in time investment. But unless the hardware evolves in terms of what it provides you in terms of resins for applications that are developed, you really are stuck with a dud, which is not the case with the one. I think Julie made that point very well, but we will look at that in detail as well. I do look at software. When I first started 3D printing, software was clunky. There were a whole bunch of settings. Today, with artificial intelligence, today with other possibilities in software, it's great to see that the industry emphasis is on user ease and really on a UI UX interface that is absolutely downright simple, something that anybody can use. Finally, I do look at biocompatibility. This has become more important for me personally than it has been in the past. Something that, 7 years ago, I was only printing models and I wasn't really worried about biocompatibility. Apologies for that spelling error there. But you'll see that I take biocompatibility very, very seriously today because we are printing things that we leave in patients' mouths for sustained durations of time. Let's start with applications then. These are perhaps my most common applications in terms of what I use 3D printers for. As I said, when I first started out, I did just models. But in my practice today, these are some of the things we print almost on an everyday basis. There are other less used applications that I use my printers for, but we're certainly doing a lot of surgical guides, a lot of splints, a lot of all-on-X, custom trays, implant restorations, regular toothpaste restorations, and definitely dentures as well. So all of those applications, I find 3D printing extremely relevant for. Some of those are also definitive solutions in my practice today. For example, a splint is a definitive solution. An implant restoration in some mouths is a definitive solution for me. And definitely dentures are a definitive solution for me as well. And so some of these do live in my patients' mouths for sustained periods of time, and I'll bring that into context when we discuss biocompatibility. Not all applications are created equal. I mean, I do make models all the time. We make articulated models or models that you can bring together very nicely, like the one you see in the picture with an implant custom abutment and an implant restoration next to it. You could argue that a model is not something that goes into a patient's mouth. So there's actually very little regulation in the world for a model resin. But if you think about the fact that your restorations are going to come into contact with that resin in some situations, that is also something you do need to take seriously to some degree. Surgical guides, custom trays like the ones you see in the picture definitely don't live in my patients' mouths for very long. A surgical guide is only used at the time of the surgery. A custom tray only stays around my patient's mouth for as long as an impression takes. I don't take very many impressions, but on the odd occasion that I do take an impression, I do find it very useful to print custom trays for some applications. And you'll notice that tray has been designed entirely in CAD. It's got tissue stops. It's got holes for implant impression copings and all of that. But let's go back to what I'm talking about. Not all applications are created equal. These are not applications that demand a significant degree of biocompatibility. But when I start putting splints in patients' mouths, and these splints stick around for a long duration of time, or if I'm doing even try-in dentures, like the one that you see in the picture, a monolithic denture that we've printed in a try-in material that we've custom stained, so a patient can go away and try that. or even a definitive denture, or even the all-on-X prosthesis that you see on the lower right. For a full arch, which is an FP1 solution, something I didn't dare to do even 2 years ago. But today we do pretty consistently. The strength of some of these materials is incredible. There can be long-term provisionals as well in those situations in an all-on-X kind of situation. So when you're talking about applications like this, you do need to realize that these applications live in your patient's mouth for sustained periods of time. A denture in particular is directly in contact with the patient's mucosa. And whatever these products are leaching in terms of residual monomers or incorrectly cured applications, all of that's going to be in contact with your tissue. You're dealing with resins that have some degree of cytotoxicity if they've not been handled properly. You could argue that some of them even have carcinogenicity if you don't treat them properly. And so there are multiple studies out there that you can look at in the literature that demonstrate toxicity to varying degrees to these products if they are not handled properly. Now, this is not unique to 3D printing resins alone. The same is true even of an injection molded denture or a denture made by other methods, for example. Every time you're dealing with products that need to have certain parameters respected in terms of how they need to be treated, then you do need to respect those parameters. Otherwise, you can have all kinds of issues. So we're now moving into a space with 3D printing where we are putting things into patients' mouths for sustained periods of time. And we do need to think about biocompatibility at a whole different level. So this is the sequence of things, if you like. You've got a resin, you've got a printer in terms of hardware, you've got some kind of washing system, you've got some kind of curing system. Obviously, resins are regulatorily validated, unless there are things in some markets, model resins are not really regulated. But for most resins, anything that you use to make something that goes into a patient's mouth, that needs to be regulatorily managed. And so you have the US FDA, or you have MDR in Europe with the CE mark, or you have the Therapeutic Goods Administration Authority in Australia. New Zealand has MedSafe, Canada has Health Canada, whatever. These organizations all regulate 3D printing resins today. And there are very, very strict regulatory criteria to be met by any resin manufacturer. But where things start to go wrong is in the rest of the sequence, the printer, wash, and cure. You've got a dentist that's now participating in the equation. And in many practices, let's be absolutely honest, there isn't even a dentist. More often than not, there's a dental assistant or some other employee in the practice who's actually doing these things. And so if you're a dentist and you are producing something with 3D printing that is going to live in your patient's mouth for a sustained period of time, I think you really want to be sure that the application has been printed properly, the parameters have been respected with regard to wash and definitely with regard to cure, because you don't want anything leaching out of that appliance and then causing your patient a problem in the future. And so when you look at the wash cycle itself, yes, we deal more often than not with pure IPA, but there is a time attached to how long resins need to be washed. Not all resins are created equal. And, you could take two completely different resins. One could be a heavily filled ceramic resin, for instance, that's viscous and not quite as flowy as, say, a model resin or something or a surgical guide resin or something like that. And they'd have completely different parameters with regard to the time that they need to be in the wash cycle. There are other reasons why a wash cycle can be extremely limited as well. If you've ever used ceramic filled resins, you know that those resins turn chalky if you expose them to IPA for sustained durations of time. So there again, there are parameters that need to respect the material itself as much as they need to respect the need for resin removal in terms of uncured resin. When we're looking at cure, there's so many different cures on the market. My first curing unit is not something I even used today. It was no better than a nail salon curing box. And to actually see that unit still supplied is surprising, because really we should be looking at curing very, very seriously. And for the longest time, I've used very good curing units to ensure that my appliances are perfectly cured. Most of these are LED based, but then there's a lot to look at in a cure in terms of wavelengths, in terms of the intensity of the light, in terms of the circumference of lighting within the curing chamber, whether it reaches all parts of any application that you've printed. And then, of course, there's time. Now, if you think that your dental assistants or your employees don't absolutely respect these parameters, and they don't want to short circuit the washing process or the curing process and get an appliance out of the wash or out of the cure sooner than it needs to come out, just because there's a dentist waiting in the room for the appliance to be delivered, I don't know. You'd be very wrong about that. So I've seen that done time and again in multiple offices, and it's really incredible how people don't attach enough importance to these parts of the actual manufacturing process. But Julie did show you this video, and I'm going to repeat this video because for me, it's one of the most appealing things about the one. The fact that everything is RFID controlled, whether it's a resin that you use, it needs to come with an RFID in the bottle, or it's a reservoir that you use that also has an RFID in order to recognize it. So your resin reservoir becomes associated with a certain type of resin. And so really, if you're handing over your manufacturing process to your employees or to your dental assistants, as the case may be, you can be absolutely sure that they can't mix things up. There's just no way they can mix things up. That's the one's platform for the rapid print kit, in itself a very nice innovation, which we will talk about in a moment. But my focus, as I said here, is entirely about the fact that all of this is a validated process. And so right from the very beginning, your dental assistant just simply cannot get it wrong. But it's not just about RFID process control with the actual printer itself. In fact, if you look carefully at that picture of the one, you'll see the RFID sensor right in the front there. And that's what you'd expose your bottle, your resin bottle to, or your resin reservoir to. So the printer already knows what resin you're printing with, what reservoir you're printing with, and it associates that reservoir with that resin for the future. And so that's actually quite incredible. The fact that you can actually be sure that somebody that is using the printer can't get this wrong. It's also incredibly simple. It's so simple that you can actually enable delegation with full confidence. And I think that's a very important thing in today's world, because you ultimately, as the dentist, are the one who holds the accountability basket. And so it's up to you to ensure that any process that you implement in your practice is something that has no ability to be tweaked in any way by somebody else with the wrong intentions. But it's more than the printer, as I said, because it tracks to the wash as well. I did say something about parameters in terms of how long something needs to be washed. And the very nice thing about this wash cycle is that it also respects the fact that you need to use fairly clean IPA, fairly clean alcohol to actually clean a print. It's a 2-bottle system, so it has what you might call a relatively cleaner IPA in one bottle, and then it has another bottle that is used to probably a little bit more contaminated, if you want to call it that, because of the fact that it's the first bottle that goes into action mode as soon as you trigger off a wash cycle. So the two bottle mode is really nice because the wash actually scans sense that the alcohol needs to be changed as well. So it will tell you about that as well. But it's really nice because the final rinse is always done in relatively super clean IPA, and that's really nice. So the bulk of the resin is removed in the first cycle of the wash. The finer remnants of the resin, if you like, are then removed by the second bottle that kicks in. But what I really like about the wash is it also has a drying cycle. But all of this is controlled from your printer. Your printer, using what's called intelligent connectivity, will actually tell your wash what to do next. You don't get to then choose a material. You just put the print in the wash and you hit the play button, and the wash does its thing because it already knows the parameters that are generated by the profile that the printer has. And that's what we call that, a profile. A profile for any given resin is a series of parameters that tell the printer what it needs to do to actually produce the appliance, but it does much more than that. It tells the wash what to do in terms of washing the actual application. And finally, it also tells the cure what to do in terms of actual curing. The Cure is itself an incredible unit from Rapid Shape, is one of my favorite curing units on the market. It gives you multiple options. First of all, it's a vacuum-based unit where you have a vacuum pump that evacuates the air in the chamber and therefore renders it inert for absolute the zero oxygen inhibition of the curing process, because we're dealing with resins here and they're not very different from your composite restorations that you place in people's mouths that you use glycerine gel on. And so with the Cure unit, you have the ability to actually evacuate all the air in the chamber and create this very inert environment for full-on curing. But the Cure is also incredible in that you can actually connect nitrogen gas to this unit if you want to. Now, there are curing units, multiple curing units on the market that do allow this, but the Rapid Shape Cure, to the best of my knowledge, launched this as far back as 2019 or thereabouts. And so you have the best of all worlds with regard to this cure. You have the ability to supply nitrogen into the curing chamber. You have the ability to take out air in the chamber using the vacuum pump. But it's more than that. You've got appropriate wavelength LEDs that cover just about any resin on the market. And these LEDs are arranged in a manner where they absolutely surround the entire curing chamber with the printed application right in the center. And so I've had great experiences with the Cure, and it's absolutely a big favorite with me as part of the system itself. So a lot of importance there that I give to the wash and the cure and to the whole actual workflow and the potential for validation that you see here that makes it absolutely easy for you to delegate the process to somebody else and know for sure that the entire process is going to respect the parameters that the profile actually generates for that given resin, for that given application. Absolutely incredible. And so the validation of the workflow from a biocompatibility point of view is huge for me today. And it gives me the confidence to know that anything that I'm putting into my patient's mouth is something I can leave there with total confidence, knowing fully well that my patient is not going to suffer the consequences of any kind of toxicity from the material. I think there can't be better evidence of this biocompatibility than in terms of a case like this, where you see the reaction of the tissue. We use 3D printed provisional restorations now on our implants 100% of the time, whether it's an all-on-X or whether it's even a single implant like this particular case here. We are routinely using 3D printed custom provisionals. And so these work extremely well for us. This simple case, for example, you see the 3D printed restoration on the upper left corner delivered on the day of surgery. You see post-surgical healing in the picture on the upper right. The sutures are still in there, but you can see how the tissue is already looking very happy with that restoration. And it's really nice to see that there's zero reaction from that tissue. And when the patient comes back 4 months down the line, it's nice to see that there's been absolutely no change in the position of the tissue in terms of its healing. And when we take off that 3D printed restoration, look at the quality of the tissue surrounding that implant. Everything that tells you that the tissue finds that restoration completely biocompatible. Here's another 3D printed restoration on an implant abutment, in this case, a tie base. Um, this is almost 100% in terms of what we do in my own practice. In terms of provisional restorations, we do a lot of 3D printed restorations, but we're also starting to use 3D printed restorations in some mouths as definitive restorations. I mean, you just have to take a look at some of these patients' other teeth to be aware that there's erosion involved, there's a bit of bruxism involved. 3D printed restorations do hold some advantages in terms of being definitive implant restorations as well. But then again, my focus there is the tissue. Look at the quality of the tissue. We will consistently use 3D printed restorations to sculpt our tissue form. And we are just seeing this all the time, the reaction of tissue to beautiful biocompatible restorations. The tissue is absolutely reflective of the fact that these resins are 100% biocompatible. The next thing I'll look at, moving on from biocompatibility, is accuracy. Now, the whole idea that you can print something out of a resin and have it be dimensionally accurate is incredible. If you're somebody like me who's been printing for 7 years, you will know the travails that we endured when we first tried to make something using 3D printing. I won't name the printer that I started with 7 years ago, but I can tell you this. We had a lot of dimensional calibration, a lot of tolerance adjustment, a lot of tweaking and playing with all kinds of settings before we could even make something that was precise in terms of fit. Today, we don't even need to worry about these things. I mean, look at the fit of that splint in the upper left corner in terms of its fit on the teeth. In terms of implant restorations on the upper right and the lower right, of course, you can see absolutely fantastic fit between that printed restoration. Look at the fit, for instance, between that custom abutment and that 3D printed crown on the lower right corner. I haven't even taken the supports off that crown. And so you can see the absolutely precise fit against that margin. Look also at toothpaste restorations in the lower left corner, and you'll see how I've taken off 2 of the restorations just to show you the proximal areas. Those are fresh off the printer. They've just been washed and cured. The supports haven't even been taken off. You can see the absolute adaptation to the margin with those restorations. And in the picture on the right, between those 2 models, you can see the finished restorations. All we've done is stain, glaze, and polish. Well, actually stain glaze only in that particular instance, but you can see how that looks really, really nice. Now, some of you may not think very highly of glaze. We just published an article barely a week ago showing that some of the new glazes work really well. And they work as well as, or even better than, some of the polishing systems that are on the market. But that's a story for another day. But I'm sure those pictures show you the kind of accuracy that we are able to see. Now, growth. I did make an early reference to the fact that your printer is just a point-in-time hardware investment, and really you need to be thinking about what resins you're going to be working with. I get this question almost every day. I get somebody who sends me a message saying they want to buy a 3D printer in some part of the world, and they ask me, what should they get? Routine question. And my typical answer is, what are you going to do with it? What do you want to print? And typically, most dentists will look at me and say, well, I want to start with splints, or I want to start with crowns. but I really would like to future-proof myself. I'd like to print everything along the line that comes up with 3D printing. Who knows what's going to come up? So I want to have something that's future-proof. This is such a classic answer. The truth of the matter is we don't know the future. I have been absolutely astonished in terms of what we are able to print over the last 5 years. I started out doing just models, and to even get a precise model 7 years ago was not easy. But today we're really pushing the boundaries with printing. I used to think that printing won't replace milling. I've started to believe that it's definitely an adjunct to milling, but who knows if it will replace milling as well. So I've stopped trying to predict the future anymore with regard to what we can do with 3D printing. But the point I'm trying to make with this slide is that I truly believe in open systems. So RapidShape does have their own bunch of resins. The RS Vivo line that you see at the bottom of the slide is launching in Q4 2025. Some of these resins are made for RapidShape by reputed manufacturers. Current MDR regulations in Europe will require disclosure of who makes the resins. So, you're going to get bottles that actually tell you where the resins actually come from. But the fact remains that RapidShape works with multiple manufacturers, and I really respect that because I want to know that I have a piece of hardware in terms of a printer sitting on my desk that isn't just going to be confined to the resins of today, but it's also going to be open to whatever is going to be developed in the future. And I think that's a pretty important consideration for anybody getting into 3D printing today. It's also important from that point of view to think about DLP technology that Julie referred to earlier, because DLP gives a printer a lot of scope for expansion in terms of what it can actually end up printing and definitely what it can end up printing accurately. If you understand DLP technology as intimately as I do, you will respect RapidShape's choice of DLP technology itself. So I find it very cool that they are open to working with multiple resin manufacturers, and it's not about selling their own resins alone. And what this means for me is I'm not within a closed resin system of some kind and a closed printer system of some kind where I'm envious of something that some other company has developed in terms of a resin, but I have to wait for my own printer company to actually develop something equivalent for me to use. And so that's not a situation I ever want to be in. So I'm a diehard open system user, and I really respect the fact that we're not only using a vast variety of resins with these RapidShape printers today, but there's also so much scope to actually be inclusive in the long term. And I think that's extremely important. Please don't think in terms of just the present or in terms of what you can do today with 3D printing. You do need to have something that is future-proof in some sense and is not going to confine you to a bunch of resins that are developed only by the actual printer company itself. Enough said. So I do look for growth in that sense. I want to grow my applications. I want to grow my resin offering in terms of what I use. I'm constantly changing my favorite resin for a given application. And some of these resins that you see are still in development for RapidShape. Most of them that you see on this slide are, however, already incorporated. Now, when you think about resins and the fact that you have choice, it's really cool that you also have flexibility with cost. Because one of the things I see with closed resin systems is you have no choice. You've got to buy a certain resin that is made in a certain system because it's closed, and you cannot use something else that's potentially cheaper in terms of cost, more affordable for you. Now, some of these prices that I've put on this slide are actually amongst the more expensive resins on the market. But you do have so much flexibility with cost nowadays. And is cost important to me? I used to think that it didn't matter when I first started 3D printing models and stuff like that. The cost of resin was next to nothing. I didn't really care. But we've got resins now that are incredibly expensive. We've got some resins that are, $400-500 per, for a small little bottle of 300 grams. And so we've got some very expensive resins on the market. And it's also one of the reasons why I think the smaller reservoirs and the smaller platforms are such a cool idea, because you're not pouring a significant amount of resin into a huge resin reservoir and then repeatedly pouring resin back from your resin reservoir into a bottle. I typically don't do that anymore. I just have multiple resin reservoirs. I store them properly, but I pour out very small amounts of resin for some applications like crowns, for example, where the resins are also very, very expensive. So it really works for me to be able to use a rapid print kit and a rapid print kit reservoir, which is very small for one of these resins. The industry and the market is definitely moving towards that kind of containment of the quantity of resin that you work with. But look at some of these costs anyway. A model that costs barely $3, a crown that costs $6 or $7, or a splint that costs about $6. 3D printing is redefining the cost of different applications that we manufacture in practice and provide to our patients. There's a whole different costing now that makes it possible for us to make these things more affordable to our patients if we want to. But I also like the idea of speed. And I think it's incredibly important to be able to print things fast. I will talk specifically about crowns with the Rapid Print Kit platform. But even with the large platform that comes with the one printer, the platform itself is a super cool part of the printer. I like the fact that it has no bolts. I can literally click it into place. I like the fact that when a print is completed, the platform actually automatically disengages. It places itself on an inclination, so the residual resin can already start to drip into your resin reservoir. I think all of those things are very, very cool. But the large platform is what I've used a lot with the one, and we've printed a lot of things. And I really like the fact that force feedback technology that RapidShape has actually developed is something that allows these printers to print incredibly fast. It's certainly the fastest DLP printer that I know of with some of these applications. I know there are other printers pushing those boundaries as well. It's in your interest and my interest as clinicians, of course, to see these speeds constantly being improved, both in terms of resin, in terms of technology, and it's fantastic that we can do this. So if you're printing 50 micron models on the lower left there, look at that, 50 microns. But if you're looking at applications where you're printing die models like that and you want absolute precision, if you're checking a case with veneers or you're working with implant analogs for custom abutment restorations, you do want to print in 50 microns. And you can actually print a couple of models like that in about 45 minutes. Same for something like All-on-X prosthesis, for instance. You can put up to 4 arches on that large platform, and you can have those ready in 45 minutes as well, and delivered to a patient who can have his implants immediately loaded and leave the practice with actual teeth. Splints were a significant challenge for a lot of printer companies. It's really cool to see these splints print at 100 microns. You don't need lower layer thicknesses than that for splints, really, and they can be printed in something as little as 35 minutes. I mean, my splints used to take hours to print in the past, and it's really amazing that I can actually consider same appointment dentistry as far as splints are concerned nowadays, because sometimes when I complete a full mouth rehab and I've got a bunch of 14 crowns in somebody's upper arch, I want to protect those restorations right away, particularly if the patient is a bruxer. And I want the ability to fabricate a splint or a night guard, a flat plane splint, as the whatever the situation demands, and to be able to give that to the patient right after I've completed the restorations is really so cool. And so splints have become a same appointment thing for some patients in my practice, at least. And I think that's absolutely amazing. But we'll talk more about splints in the context of the rapid print kit as well. The rapid print kit is fantastic. Rapid Shape is not the only company on the planet to think about the idea of making smaller resin reservoirs. But I like the idea that they've chosen to make these smaller resin reservoirs compatible with their existing printers instead of going the way of making another brand new printer and offering that to the market just to be able to print contained amounts of resin. As with all things Rapid Shape, I'm constantly amazed by the quality of finish on these parts. Julie made a brief reference to the fact that you hardly see plastic used. This little resin container that you see for the platform on the screen, that is one of perhaps the few things that I see in plastic for a Rapid Shape. But otherwise, the quality of die cast finish on some of these components, I just love seeing the kind of quality that I get from this particular company. So the Rapid Print Kit fundamentally involves two very important things. It involves a small platform that you see on the lower right. It's a much smaller platform compared to the large platform you saw on the previous screen where I print some of my larger applications. But it also features a smaller resin reservoir. Now, these resin reservoirs are sort of a resin reservoir within a resin reservoir. So it's really you've got an adapting component in terms of what you see on the lower left that contains that tiny resin reservoir. But you've also got very nice storage mechanisms with these, with a UV-proof rubber lid, silicon sort of lid that comes on top of these. And it's really nice to be able to store these very expensive resins. Most of the resins that I use with the Rapid Print Kit are very expensive resins. And so it matters to me that I'm able to only pour out small quantities, and I'm also able to store these very effectively so I can continue to repeat use them within that same resin reservoir. Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about why the smaller platform. But it has a lot to do with the way 3D printing is done. If you've got a platform that comes down into a resin and the platform is large, it displaces a large quantity of resin. It takes time for the displaced resin to come back to a horizontal normal. So that therefore is something that affects speed in terms of how quickly the platform can go in and out of the resin. So using smaller platforms, using smaller resin reservoirs it really speeds up the whole process. The little Rapid Print Kit platform is also very similar to the large platform, easily locked in, and it also disengages pretty nicely, just like the large platform. That's a close-up of the resin reservoir, one of the resin reservoirs. In this instance, we use that for crown and bridge resin. And you can see how in the picture on the right, the platform would fit within that tiny reservoir. But what I think is super cool is that while most companies are actually using these smaller print fab platforms mostly for speed with crowns, Rapid Shape is also using these with splints, and that's fantastic, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. Well, first of all, the resin reservoir for the splint is really quite different. If you look carefully at these two small resin reservoirs, these are part of the Rapid Print Kit, both of them. The one on the left has a relatively transparent film at the bottom of the resin reservoir, whereas the one that's intended for printing splints has a rather cloudy film on the bottom of the resin reservoir. What this cloudy film does is it controls the intensity of the light that actually goes into a resin that's transparent, like splint resin. And what it does is it gives us a fantastic finished surface that you don't even need to polish, which is absolutely amazing. And I'll tell you why I find this so amazing. When I make splints, I typically will take what's called an open bite intraoral scan. I'll stick a leaf gauge into a patient's mouth, get the patient into centric. Typically, the leaf gauge opens up the patient's vertical to the degree that I want the vertical occupied by the actual material of the splint itself. And so once I take that kind of open bite intraoral scan in centric, that's what I tend to design my splint on. Why am I doing this? Because really, splints are not very friendly when it comes to something like thermoforming, because you make a splint and then you take it to the patient's mouth. You find there are all kinds of occlusal prematurities. You end up adjusting the hell out of a splint, and sometimes that can take an incredible amount of time. And for us as clinicians, time is money. So it's really incredible that we have mechanisms today with CAD software, with intraoral scanning, to be able to design a splint that absolutely fits the occlusion. So theoretically, you should need absolutely no adjustment in a patient's mouth. But then in the past, we had splints that we needed to polish. And so every time we took any polisher to a splint, basically what you did is you ruined the CAD occlusion, the occlusion that you generated within CAD software. So the idea that we can print a splint today and have the occlusion that the splint was created in remain pristine and perfect when you take it to the patient's mouth is fantastic. Because what happens with a lot of these splints is I deliver them and it's a 5-minute appointment and I walk out of the room because there's nothing to adjust. There's nothing to polish. There's nothing to adjust. The bite is perfect. The finish is perfect. And that, what more could you ask for with regard to these applications? In my own practice, my use of flat plane splints has escalated dramatically since COVID. I don't know what it is with patients, but you're definitely seeing a lot of erosion related wear, and that's lifestyle related, of course. But we're also seeing a lot more bruxism in some instances, or maybe we're noticing these things more often. I don't give every patient who's got wear a splint. You do need to assess and examine and ensure that you're actually dealing with somebody who's actively bruxing, or there needs to be a reason to protect restorative dentistry or something like that. But just the idea that you can make splints and have them remain absolutely occlusion pristine and virgin in that sense is just absolutely fantastic. That's another picture. On the left there, you've got a splint reservoir, splint resin reservoir from the rapid print kit. And on the right, you've got the more transparent film that's part of the crown and bridge reservoir for the rapid print kit. So I find it incredible that they're pushing the boundaries of rapid shape with these smaller platforms, not just with printing crowns, which is what most printing companies are doing, but also printing something that is a single arch application. I'm certainly messing around to see whether I can get a denture or whether I can get a surgical guide even out of some of these things. But as of now, that's not something that's possible. But it's really amazing to see that they've pushed the boundaries, not only in terms of toothpaste single unit restorations, but also in terms of arch applications like the splint. But they've also taken things further with the crystal polish tank that has that cloudy film that gives you the kind of finished surface that you want on a splint. I tend to wash my platform itself with the one very commonly right in the wash. That may not necessarily be a rapid shape recommendation, but I just find it convenient to do so. And I find it absolutely fantastic that I can use materials like Detax free print crown, for example, that actually have a wash cycle on the rapid shape wash, on the RS wash. It's not just something I'm spraying and wiping and drying, but I can actually wash this particular resin, and the wash actually has a parameter for this resin that ensures that it isn't exposed to IPA for too long, and it's not exposed to IPA for longer than the parameter recommends in any case. That's those prints just fresh washed from the printer, and my Tryon models on the background that you see blurred, but you can see how these things turn out. Obviously, this is just pre-stain and glaze, and this material in particular works really, really well for me. Splints, that's a splint that's fresh out of the rapid print kit. crystal polished resin reservoir, and you can see that glassy finish that you get. So it's just absolutely fresh out of the tank. You can see the drops of resin still attached to the distal ends of the splint. And so I just wanted to show you the kind of glassy finish that you get with splints when you use this particular reservoir. So that's absolutely fantastic as well. The last thing I tend to look for with a printer after I've taken you through biocompatibility, growth, accuracy, and speed is software. Uh, I really like software to be simple. I really like software not to show me too many options, like any clinician, because there are things that my dental assistants can meddle with or do things with, and I really don't want that. I understand very comprehensive software. I've worked with some of the best softwares on the market, and I know sometimes software tries to give you every possible option that you can control. I think RapidShape's done the right thing with Print Studio. They evolved their own software, moved away from a far more comprehensive software that I still use called NetFab. But I like the fact that the focus again with the one printer, with the validated workflow and these platforms and resin reservoirs continues to be simplicity that carries into the software as well. Tremendous number of applications that have slowly become available in Print Studio since I first saw the software more than a year ago. Again, I had the privilege of beta testing the software, and I really like how it's such a simple software to use. So you get options between small and large platforms, of course, and with each of these platforms, you get options between using a crystal polished reservoir or a normal reservoir. Obviously, the normal reservoir in terms of the larger platform does a large number of applications as well. You can print just about anything on the large platform today. And I commonly will print models. You can see the kind of finish you get on these models. The small platform is also incredibly interesting, as I've just been saying so much about it. This is the Rapid Print Kit platform, and that's what the build volume looks like if you're printing something like, say, detax-free print crown, which you see selected as a profile in the upper left corner. They've done something incredible. If the minute you change this to a splint, they've actually expanded the build volume. And what that means is you can actually print a splint that exceeds the platform's dimensions in a certain sense, because there is space to accommodate that within the Rapid Print Kit crystal polish reservoir. The platform fits within that reservoir, but they've made complete and total use of the entire volume that is available to actually trigger off this full arch application. And I think this is fantastic. So the build volume on the Rapid Print Kit's crystal polish reservoir is larger than it is on the crown. So that's really interesting. Software is pretty simple. Those are standard tilting tools that you get. You can also print things absolutely supportless if you want to. That's also possible. So that's something you can do. And you've got some degree of control with regard to layer thickness with some resins. With some resins you don't, which is again in your interest, because then your dental assistant isn't trying to increase the layer thickness so he or she can get a faster print out of the printer. So there's again a lot of validation in this workflow as well, which I think is very nice. That's just a typical splint laid out on the large platform and one laid out on the Rapid Print Kit's smaller platform. I work a lot with this particular splint resin called Splint Master Tough from Detax. You will have RS Vivo Splint Hard as well, which is a very nice resin very soon. So some great options there with regard to splint resins as well. This picture just shows you the number of restorations that you can fit in on the Rapid Print Kit's smaller platform. We've pushed this as far as 8 restorations. If you're doing anterior restorations or if you're doing something like veneers, there's no reason why you can't push this to even 12 restorations. And I like this volume. I'm not confined by a platform that is so small that I can only do far fewer restorations. I like the size of this platform in terms of the fact that if I'm dealing with somebody that I'm doing, upper and lower 6 veneers for, that's 12 veneers in total, then I can actually fit all of those on this platform and things actually print. So in many ways, I took you through what matters to me in a 3D printer. In many ways, the one ticks all the boxes for me. And I love the involvement I have with Rapid Shape to be able to give them feedback to continually improve this product. I've no doubt that this isn't the last word has not been said on this particular printer, and we will continually see more development with time in terms of applications and otherwise. So thanks very much for your very patient listening. Feel free to reach out to me. In New Zealand, it's very early in the morning. It's 6 a.m. now, and I've been up since 3 a.m. to bring this webinar to you. But it's been really cool to be able to do that. Thank you, Julie.
Well, thank you so much, Nitish, that you are here at 3 a.m. New Zealand time. We really appreciate it. Thank you everyone for listening. We now have the time to do some Q&A. I will also pull up just a couple of topics regarding how can you learn more about this. If you have any outstanding questions after this webinar and you would like to talk to one of our digital workflow specialists, please feel free to scan this QR code and input some information, and then you can reach out, like our digital workflow specialist will contact you to schedule a demo with you, a 30-minute remote demo. They will walk through any remaining questions you may have about Rapid Shape systems overall. Okay, so Nitish, we did get some questions, and Henry, you asked your question right at the beginning, so let's start with you. What resins do you use for All on X? And then also he's asking, do you use them as permanent restorations or just temporaries?
I work with multiple resins, some of them that are still in development as well. But I think the most predominant resin I use is Pactent's Titan. But with the one, you can also use a resin from Deltamed, which has been validated for this particular printer. Do I provide these as definitive restorations? The answer is no. Is that something that could possibly happen in the future? Absolutely, yes. I do have access to newer materials that are incredible, and it is very possible that we will be providing patients with definitive all-on-X restorations that are printed. But almost 100% of our provisionals, even long-term provisionals, they certainly live in my patient's mouth for 4 to 6 months. And so we are providing printed all-on-X prosthetics without a doubt.
Yeah. Okay. Then another question from Nazanin. Can we use the printer to print an orthodontic retainer or night guards?
Right. Night guards, obviously, that's splint resin, very easily said. I don't know how much I can say about retainers. Let's just say, can I safely say it's coming, Julie? It's not unfair to say that, isn't it? There are certainly very, very good retainer resins on the market that the one is already being tested with. And so there are some very good resins in development around the world for retainers as well as for orthodontic aligners as well. So don't be surprised to see those applications coming. I think they will become more commonplace with time as well. Will they absolutely replace thermoforming as a technology? Who knows? But I'm definitely seeing. I don't do a lot of orthodontics personally, but I know people who do with printed aligners as well as with printed retainers, and they're telling me some very good things. Yeah.
Yeah. But night guards, absolutely possible. The night guard resin is the same as a splint resin, so Splint Master Tough or even a flex material is also available from different brands. So you definitely have that option. Okay. So Nazanin, I would assume that your question for do we need to polish the end product also pertains to splints or maybe provisionals. I think my short answer is yes, somewhat, but Nitish, I will let you give the longer answer.
With splints, night guards, retainers, even aligners, we are seeing use of the same kind of technology where the intensity of the light is controlled by a cloudy film. So on most anything that's a transparent resin, even a surgical guide resin for that matter, you can get fantastic finish on these materials by using these intensity occluding films. A lot of companies are working with that kind of thing, and Rapid Shape is no exception. With regard to whether this will extend to non-transparent resins is a question for the future. I don't really know the answer to that. At this particular point in time with restorations, I'm definitely polishing and I'm definitely glazing, although it would be fair to say that I'm glazing more than I'm polishing nowadays because we have definite clear scientific data now that the glazing actually works and glazing actually lasts. I referred to an article that was published just a week ago, and you can look that up online. It was published in Materials. So yeah, so it's not hard to work with glazing. I'm glazing dentures, I'm glazing restorations, and it works very, very well for me. But there's no reason why you couldn't be polishing as well.
Okay, so Nazanin asked a follow-up question. How do you glaze the night guard?
You don't need to glaze a night guard because the night guard, if used with something that has intensity occluding film, like the Rapid Shape crystal polish resin reservoir, whether you're using the large platform or whether you're using the Rapid Print Kit platform, as long as you're using a crystal polish reservoir that's designed for those platforms, you absolutely don't need to apply any glaze or even polish. So you basically print a finished product. And possibly the only adjustment I make to that is to the actual support points. And those support points are typically located on the labial of the splint. So I'm not really affecting the occlusion of the splint. So no, there's no glazing, no polishing, no nothing.
Yeah, Nazanin, on this point, there will be more webinars coming out about the individual workflows. So then based on each workflow, you can kind of learn which would need polishing, staining, or glazing, for example. So Nazanin asked another question. I love it. How long do the veneers last that you can print out yourself?
I don't know because veneer resins are relatively new.
Mhm.
I've been using 3D printed restorations for about a year now. So that's the best data that I have for you. How long will they last? I really don't know the answer to that. Are they comparable to milled porcelain, which is going to be the next question? No, they're not. But at the same time, I think there's a place for them in clinical dentistry because I think we are starting to redefine what we look at as the ideal restorative material. You can speak to top restorative dentists, and a lot of them will tell you that they like the idea of a softer material, a material that wears with your teeth, with your occlusion, rather than something that is super hard. And so the acceptability for softer materials in restorative dentistry is absolutely increasing. There's no doubt about that. And so if you put that into scientific context, you'll see that printed restorations possibly have a future. They allow accommodation within a dentition in terms of wear to a far greater degree than milled restorations and porcelain allow. So is
Mm,
hard good? Is soft better? Possibly.
yeah. Okay, so we have one more interesting question, which I think you'll enjoy this one, Nitish, based on your background. Can you elaborate on the use of the one for denture construction? Which I think can be a whole webinar in itself.
Well, first of all, I'm not. I stopped doing dentures for some time in my life because I hated doing them. 3D printing brought the excitement back into making dentures. So we make digital dentures for 95% of our cases. Our workflow is combined analog and digital. It's not completely digital, before you ask me that. So it's a combination of analog and digital, but it's predominantly digital. And certainly the manufacturing process, the production process for the dentures is 100% 3D printing driven when we make digital dentures. I used to mill dentures. I no longer mill dentures. We've got some incredible denture materials out there. Watch out for an article that's going to be published very shortly talking about multiple resins. So can you print dentures? Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. No doubt about that.
And then Oliver kind of asked a follow-up question on this. Can one print flexible partials, and how are the teeth retained in the flexible material?
It's interesting that you asked that question because in the picture on the lower left corner, you see Splint Master Flex from DTAX.
Think
DTAX is fundamentally taken. I'm sorry?
you're not sharing your screen anymore, but that's part of it.
Am I wrong in saying schedule a demo is the slide that everybody is seeing?
Yes. Oh, yeah, you're correct. Sorry about that. I thought your slide.
Yes. So in the lower left corner of that picture, you see a bottle of Splint Master Flex. Now, DTAX, for example, has taken the same technology in Splint Master Flex and put it in a denture resin. So you have Denture Flex now from DTAX, which I do use. While I do use flexible denture materials in 3D printing, I am extremely choosy about the cases that I will use these kind of prosthesis in. My son is a prosthodontist, and if anybody knows anything about prosthodontists and what they think about flexible dentures, you will know what I'm referring to. So I'm very careful where I use flexible dentures, but I definitely use them. Bonding them, absolutely no problem. I typically will use the same resin to bond teeth. Obviously, we print the teeth separately. We use the same resin to bond teeth, but you do get all kinds of resin primers on the market. I use a lot of what's called VisioLink from a company called Brident. Great primer for a lot of my 3D printing bonding. So whether I'm working with a hard resin or whether I'm working with a flexible resin, I bond a lot with PMMA primers like VisioLink, and that's worked very well for me. But the bonding medium more often than not is the actual resin itself.
Yeah. Okay, I think we'll take a final question on the Q&A because I think then we can wrap up here. From Christian, how do we ensure biocompatibility besides using resins that are validated? You mentioned wash and cure as important as resin choice. Yeah.
Well, don't step outside a validated workflow. It's as simple as that. Make sure that your hardware complies, that your wash complies, that your cure complies for any resin that you're using for any given application. The application is also important. It's not just about the resin, because I constantly see resins being abused for applications that they weren't designed for in the first place. That's a problem as well. So I would recommend highly that you stay within a validated workflow and you document that in your own clinical records in terms of what resin was used. My notes will now say what resin I used for a certain application. They will say what printer it was printed on, and my notes will say what wash and cure I used as well. I don't go into detail and actually specify the parameters itself, but I will make sure that my notes document that I used a validated workflow. I think this is important from a medical legal perspective as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got some like I like that people are using the Q&A section to say thank you, and we have one comment saying incredible. So thank you guys. Nazanin, I think your question we will answer maybe separately, asking for which resins to use for which indication. I think that we can address based on it'll depend on which area you're from, etc. All right. Thank you so much, Nitish, for being here. Thank you, Nitish, for sharing your knowledge and your insights. I'm sure we will see you again. So I'm incredibly grateful that you've been here with us. We are going to continue our webinar series in August, and we will actually focus on a model workflow, precision models. This is a little bit more lab focused, but will also be same interest for dental offices printing their own models in-house. We will have Kelly and Jimmy Fincher, co-owners and founders of Cosmetic Advantage Dental Lab. We also have the incredible pleasure that Kelly is part of our digital workflow specialist team. So if you have lab focused questions, she will actually be one of the people answering your questions. Yeah, so they will help you guide, like master the transition from analog to digital. They will talk about lab to dental office communication, everything that you need in order to achieve good models. Now, how can you sign up for this and how can you stay in touch with us? It's by subscribing to our dental newsletter. So if you're still here, you can go ahead, scan this QR code, register for our newsletter, and then you will get email updates with any of our webinars that we're hosting. I will add that this webinar was recorded and will be available online as well. If you want to revisit any of this information, you will be able to, and it'll be on the Rapid Shape YouTube channel. So thank you so much again, Nitish, for being here. Really appreciate it as always, and we look forward to our next session with you. And I hope, I don't know, you either go take a very nice nap or you go to sleep very early tonight. I don't know which one it is. But thank you so much for being here and for being here so early as well. Really appreciate it. All right.
Thanks so much. And a real shout out to the number of attendees we had. At one point, there were over 80 attendees in the audience. It's not often that webinars attract this kind of attention. So that's been pretty cool to see. Most people watch recordings, but the
Yeah.
real shout out to all the people who took the time to actually be live
If
in
there's
terms of
anyone else from
attending.
New Zealand, then I'm quite impressed by the early birds in the house here. But all right,
I
guys.
do see I do see Jerome. So yes, there is
Yes.
somebody from New Zealand.
All right.
Very
Then
good.
have a wonderful evening or day or, afternoon, everyone. And I appreciate you being here. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks.